twin sisters vanished without a sound during what was supposed to be a simple game of hide-and-seek near the edge of their family's farmland. There were no footprints, no torn fabric, no sounds, just absence. For weeks, all that remained was the echo of unanswered calls and a forest that refused to give anything back. But 2 months later, their mother lifted a hay bale inside the old barn, and what she discovered made her freeze in disbelief. Lauren Winters sat in her kitchen, her fingers wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee, across from Rachel Bennett, the county's grief counselor. Through the window, she watched yet another search team comb the forest edge with dogs, their movements steady but grim. It was exactly 2 months since her daughters had disappeared. Rachel's voice gently broke the silence. "Do you feel ready to talk through what happened that day?" she asked, eyes following Lauren's fixed stare. Lauren let out a breath, her knuckles pale against the ceramic. "We've gone over it so many times," she said softly. "They were playing hide-and-seek. I was out making deliveries in town. We always told them, Eastfield only, nowhere near the road." Rachel gave a small nod, jotting something down in her notebook, the quiet scratching oddly grounding in the stillness of the kitchen. "When I got back, Emma didn't come when I called. My mother-in-law said she was hiding in the barn." Lauren's voice was flat, dulled by endless retellings to officials, search crews, and now this soft-spoken woman trying to help. "We found Emma's ribbon near the property line. That's all." Rachel looked up carefully. "And Nathan? He was with them that day?" Lauren shook her head. Strands of hair slipped across her face, but she didn't bother to move them. "No, he was making deliveries in Millfield. He arranged for my mother-in-law to check on the girls every 30 minutes. She was the one who called me when Emma didn't answer." Outside, the search team moved deeper into the woods. Lauren watched them silently before speaking again. Detective Rivera said these sessions might help. "First, I lost Mark, and now the girls." Her voice cracked on the last word. Rachel reached out, giving Lauren's hand a quick, warm squeeze. "You've been through more than anyone should," she said gently. "But you're not alone. Nathan has been handling so much. The farm, the logistics, the coordination with authorities. That's no small thing." Lauren gave a slight nod. Nathan had stepped in after Mark's accident last year, taking over the farm and becoming the one stable force in her life. But lately, even that stability had begun to feel fragile. She looked out again. The once perfect fence line was patched hastily with wire, a small detail, but it gnawed at her. After Rachel left, Lauren remained at the table, the coffee still cold. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Then, soft footsteps echoed down the hall. Her mother-in-law appeared, worn and tired. "Nathan called," she said. "He's running late, making deliveries across county lines." Lauren nodded, distracted. Since losing Mark, Nathan had done everything, maybe too much, but she had been too broken to see clearly. Then the phone rang, breaking the silence. She walked into the study and answered. "Mrs. Winters, it's Detective Rivera. I need to confirm something." "Yes?" Lauren said, uneasy. Was Nathan definitely in Millfield the day the girls disappeared? Her heart skipped. "That's what he told me." "Why?" The detective paused. "The market manager in Millfield says your farm didn't have a booth that day." Lauren stood still. That didn't make sense. She remembered Nathan loading crates that morning, remembered the wave he gave as he drove off. "That can't be right," she said slowly. "Can you speak with Nathan when he returns?" the detective asked. Lauren nodded faintly, a chill rising in the quiet room. "It's probably nothing," the detective had said, "but we have to be thorough." After hanging up, Lauren stood still in the study, the phone still warm in her hand. The detective's question echoed in her mind. Could it really be a mix-up? Or had Nathan, the one person who'd been her anchor, lied about where he'd gone that day? The thought felt like a betrayal in itself. Nathan had carried her through grief she never imagined she'd survive. Trying to shake the unease, she glanced toward the filing cabinet where Nathan kept the farm records. Maybe she could clear this up on her own. She pulled open the bottom drawer and found the old delivery ledger, Mark's familiar, tidy handwriting filling the first half before giving way to Nathan's hurried scrawl. As she flipped through, she noticed something odd. Dates crossed out, entries rewritten. The organization was chaotic, unlike Mark's meticulous habits. It reminded her of the patchy repairs around the farm lately, functional but sloppy. Nathan had been doing everything. Maybe it was just the weight of responsibility wearing him down. Then her eyes landed on a few cash withdrawals, too frequent, too large, not typical for routine farm costs. She hesitated. Maybe Nathan had reasons, paying in cash to avoid card fees, something Mark occasionally did. But a quiet doubt surfaced. Was Nathan making personal withdrawals? Or was it something worse? She shut the ledger and slid it back into the drawer. She wasn't ready to go down that path. Not yet. The landline rang again, slicing through the silence. Lauren picked it up, half expecting the detective again. But it was Mrs. Keller. The neighbor's voice was bright and familiar. "Lauren, I found some pictures of the girls from the summer picnic. Thought you might like to see them. I've got iced tea ready if you feel like stopping by." 20 minutes later, Lauren walked down the dusty trail to the Keller farmhouse. Mrs. Keller had been part of her life since the day she married Mark. Today, the old woman welcomed her with a glass of tea and a spread of photo albums on the kitchen table. "I've been organizing old photos," she explained, flipping through pages. "Look, church picnic, the girl's birthday, harvest fest." Lauren sat down, her breath catching as each image pulled her backward. Abby and Emma with birthday cake on their cheeks, on the tractor with Mark, laughing in the garden. Their matching braids, identical smiles, frozen in time. Then she stopped. One photo caught her eye, dated July 15th, 2 months ago. The focus was on Mrs. Keller's grandniece and her new bike, but in the background, Nathan, near the barn, carrying lumber and what looked like plastic sheeting. Lauren leaned in. "Mrs. Keller, this says July 15th, but Nathan told everyone he was at an equipment auction in Springfield that day." Mrs. Keller adjusted her glasses. "He wasn't. That was my grandniece's birthday. I remember clearly. He was coming and going all day. I even called him for help when I thought I saw a snake by the shed." Lauren's heart pounded. "You're sure about the date?" "Absolutely," Mrs. Keller said firmly. "She turned 12 that day. Got those roller skates she wanted. This photo, taken around 4 p.m. She paused, then lowered her voice slightly. "Mark never would have made construction changes without talking to you first. Said a farm's a partnership." Lauren stared at the image, her eyes fixed on Nathan's profile, half turned as he carried a long piece of wood toward the barn. He never mentioned building anything, never said a word about repairs. What was he working on? She whispered to herself. And more importantly, why lie? After everything she'd lost, after all the trust she'd placed in him, Lauren felt a chill settle in her chest. If Nathan had been keeping secrets, what else hadn't he told her? The photo had unsettled her, but the financial records made Lauren's stomach twist. "Thank you for the pictures, Mrs. Keller," she said quietly, closing the album. "I should head back. The search team might need me." As she walked the familiar path to the farmhouse, her thoughts returned to the college fund Mark had opened for the twins. Last month, when she checked the balance, it was lower than expected. She'd brushed it off as a bank error or some forgotten auto payment, but now she wasn't so sure. Determined to clear her head, Lauren pulled out the farm's tax documents. Nathan had been managing the finances ever since Mark's accident, but maybe pitching in would help ease her mind and lighten his load. She retrieved the accordion file from the study and spread its contents across the kitchen table. As she organized receipts and banking statements, several charges caught her attention, purchases she didn't recognize. Building materials from Handover Hardware, a ventilation system from Midwest Agricultural Supply, and something labeled acoustic paneling from a specialized retailer she'd never heard of, all dated just weeks before the girls vanished. Lauren stared at the receipts. None of this made sense for a simple farm operation. What would they need soundproofing for? Mark had always been transparent about every dollar spent. Even minor purchases were discussed. But these items? They'd never been mentioned. No conversations, no notes, just quiet transactions. Was Nathan hiding something? She hated even entertaining the idea. After all, he'd been the one to hold the farm, and her, together since Mark's death. Without him, she wasn't sure she'd have made it through. But the documents in front of her told a different story. That evening, as Nathan's truck rumbled into the driveway, Lauren quickly tucked the receipts back into their folder. She wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. Not without knowing more. She made dinner as usual, trying to keep her voice and movements casual. As they sat down across from each other, the silence stretched. "This roast is good," Nathan said eventually, breaking the quiet. His voice was tired, and his eyes looked worn. "Glad you're eating again. That's a good sign." Lauren nodded, keeping her expression neutral. She let him eat a few more bites before casually saying, "Detective Rivera called today." Nathan's fork paused midair. Barely. Then he took a bite. "Oh?" he said, voice even. "He had a question about your delivery run to Millfield, the day the girls went missing." Nathan set his fork down slowly and reached for his water glass, taking a long drink before responding. "He must be thinking of the previous month's schedule," Nathan said with a shrug that felt just a little too rehearsed. "He should really focus on real leads, not calendar mix-ups." Then, just like that, he pivoted to the weather. Something about rain coming in by Thursday. Lauren nodded along, but her mind was racing. The momentary hesitation, the vague response, the deflection. She filed it all away. "I think I'll turn in early," Nathan said after dinner, carrying his plate to the sink. "Got a big delivery in the morning." "I heard the search teams are coming back at sunrise," Lauren said, gathering the rest of the dishes. Something flickered across Nathan's face. Frustration? Irritation? It was gone before she could be sure. "Another search?" he said quietly, his back turned as he rinsed his plate. "It's been 2 months, Lauren. Maybe it's time they looked somewhere else." His tone was calm, logical even. But something about the words, the timing, made Lauren's skin prickle. Why would he want the searches to stop? That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind spun through everything. The receipts, the lie about the auction, the missing booth at Millfield, the photograph, and now that strange comment. None of it sat right. The clock read 11:40 p.m. The house was still, too still. Nathan's room was just down the hall. He'd moved in after Mark's death to help with the farm and stayed after the girls vanished. But now she wondered, had his presence become something else entirely? Then she heard it, the low growl of an engine. She shot upright. Outside her bedroom window, Nathan's truck headlights flicked on, but instead of heading toward the main road, they turned toward the barn. Lauren frowned, checked the time again. 11:45 p.m. Mark had never made deliveries that late, so what was Nathan doing, and why at the barn? Mark had always done his deliveries the evening before, never in the dead of night. Lauren's hand trembled on the windowsill as she watched Nathan's truck ease toward the barn under the pale moonlight. For a fleeting second, she saw him as he was at Mark's funeral, the one who held her upright when she could barely stand. But that comforting image flickered and was replaced by the inconsistencies, the altered records, the unexplained purchases, the sidestepped questions. "He wouldn't," she whispered. But then, louder in her mind, "Wouldn't he?" Her fingers hovered over her phone, torn. Nathan had been her lifeline these past months. He managed the farm, handled the search efforts, helped her face every devastating day. What if she was wrong? What if this strange late-night trip had a simple explanation? Still, the bank discrepancies, the lie about Millfield, the construction materials, they didn't just vanish, and her daughters were still missing. Even the smallest possibility that Nathan was hiding something, anything, was enough. She reached for her phone, decision hardening. She dialed quickly. "Mrs. Keller? I'm so sorry to call this late." "What is it, dear?" The older woman's voice was sharp and alert despite the hour. "It's Nathan. He just drove to the barn. It's nearly midnight." Lauren peeked again through the curtains. His truck was still parked outside the barn doors. There was a pause before Mrs. Keller responded. "Do you think he's hiding something?" Lauren swallowed and explained about the strange expenses she'd uncovered: ventilation systems, building materials, soundproofing, all things the farm had no real need for. Now this midnight visit to the barn, it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. "I was going to follow him," she added, her voice unsteady. "Be careful," Mrs. Keller warned, her tone firm. "If he's moving equipment or hiding something, you need proof. Don't confront him. Just observe, and not a word to the detective until you're certain. You'll need something solid." Lauren agreed, ending the call and quickly pulling on jeans over her pajamas. She moved with quiet resolve, the guilt of suspicion still weighing on her, but the need for truth pressing harder. Each step toward the barn was a silent declaration. Her children were still gone, and she couldn't ignore her instincts anymore. She slipped on her robe and boots, grabbed a small flashlight, but kept it off. The moonlight was just enough. She followed the familiar path to the barn, the cool air brushing against her skin. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. She kept low, moving behind the old oak tree beside the barn, a tree that had outlived generations, now bearing witness to this moment. Through the half-open barn doors, she spotted Nathan. He was straining to move a large hay bale from the far corner, the kind the twins used to climb and hide behind during playtime. But this wasn't the slow, methodical work of regular farm chores. Nathan moved with purpose, with urgency. Lauren crouched lower, her breath shallow. He walked back to his truck, retrieved several plastic bags, and began spreading their contents around the hay and the floorboards. One of the bags caught the light just enough for her to read it: Verm Guard. Nathan returned to the truck for more. Lauren pulled out her phone and quickly searched the product. Rodent repellent. Commercial grade. She exhaled in relief. Maybe that's all it was. A pest issue. Maybe he just wanted to spare her the worry. She'd been through enough. He'd always shielded her from the day-to-day problems on the farm, especially after the twins vanished. She felt a wave of shame wash over her. Had she really believed he'd betray her? After everything? He had carried the weight of the farm, faced authorities, stood by her side without complaint. Lauren's grip on the phone loosened. She was just about to slip it into her pocket when something stopped her. A warning in bold letters at the top of a review. To canine units and animal handlers, use extreme caution. Verm Guard can be toxic to dogs if inhaled in confined spaces. It severely affected my service dog's ability to track. It kept rats away, sure, but my guide dog was sick for weeks. Lauren's throat tightened as she reread the product review. Tomorrow morning, search teams with trained dogs were scheduled to sweep the property again. Why would Nathan scatter such a substance the night before? Something known to interfere with scent detection. Was he trying to hide something he didn't want those dogs to find? The cash withdrawals, the odd purchases, the evasiveness. Maybe Nathan had been quietly siphoning money and hiding the evidence in the barn. But another thought crept into Lauren's mind. Darker, heavier, one she didn't want to fully acknowledge. What if this wasn't about money at all? She watched as Nathan glanced around the yard before climbing back into his truck. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting across the darkness as he drove toward the house. Still crouched behind the old oak tree, Lauren didn't move. Loyalty pulled at her, but so did dread. If he was stealing from the farm, especially the twins' college fund, she needed to know. But every instinct told her this wasn't just about finances anymore. Once his truck disappeared down the road, she rose slowly, legs unsteady. Then she made her decision. With trembling hands, Lauren turned on her flashlight and stepped into the barn. Inside, everything felt unfamiliar. Shadows stretched across the floorboards like reaching fingers. The scent of hay mixed with something sharper, the chemical stench of the rodent repellent Nathan had scattered. She made her way to the corner where she'd seen him working. Her flashlight cut through the dim, revealing hay bales stacked unusually tight. Too uniform, too deliberate. Lauren scanned the ground. The repellent formed a strange pattern, spread thickly around the area, almost as if meant to distract attention away from this precise spot. She remembered the review, how Vermguard masked scents. Her stomach churned. She reached out, running her hand across one of the bales. It felt different, freshly cut. The twins had loved playing in the barn, making forts and hiding behind the older stacks, their laughter filling the rafters. Now Nathan had moved these with a precision that didn't feel innocent. Taking a breath, Lauren pushed. The bale shifted too easily. Fueled by a mix of fear and determination, she began sliding them one by one, her body straining with each movement, breath catching in her throat every time she glanced back at the barn doors, half expecting Nathan to reappear. Finally, the last bale gave way. And there it was, a section of flooring that didn't match the rest. The color was close, but the wood grain was off. Camouflaged hinges glinted under the beam of her flashlight. A hidden hatch. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Hands trembling, she found the edge and pulled. The hatch creaked upward, heavy, but built to open quietly. Below, a ladder descended into darkness. She leaned forward, angling the flashlight into the space, and her heart nearly stopped. Concrete walls, insulation lining them, soundproofing foam, the exact materials she'd seen on those unexplained receipts. A battery-powered lantern, a thin mattress on the floor, a stack of books, and then two faces, pale, thin, looking up at her. Abby, Emma, alive. Lauren dropped to her knees, the flashlight clattering to the floor beside her as she stared, breath frozen, thoughts scattered. It was real. They were here. They had been here all along, hidden beneath her own barn. Abby? Emma? Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper, as if the moment might disappear if she spoke too loud. The girl stared up at her, stunned, exhausted, blinking against the light. "Mom?" Abby said, shielding her eyes. Lauren couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Nathan, the man she trusted, the man who helped her grieve, had kept them here, beneath her, for 2 months, and now everything she thought she knew shattered. Her voice cracked, as though she hadn't spoken in days. She looked thinner than Lauren remembered, her cheeks sunken, her once bright hair now tangled and lifeless. "Are you better now?" Emma asked softly. "Uncle Nathan said you were really, really sick." She glanced up with wide, searching eyes, her tone gentle but unsure. "We were so worried," she added, studying Lauren's face carefully. "Is that why you came now? Because you're finally all better?" Lauren's heart sank. "What do you mean, sweetie?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "I wasn't sick." The twins exchanged puzzled looks. Then Emma said, "But Uncle Nathan told us we had to stay quiet in here so you could get better. He said you needed special medicine, and no noise or visitors, or it would make your sickness worse." Lauren stared at her daughters, horror tightening in her chest. Nathan hadn't just hidden them. He'd lied to them, lied about her, convinced them they were underground for her sake. She looked around the hidden room, the neatly folded blankets, the battery-powered lamp, paper plates with food remnants. The walls were lined with thick acoustic padding. A ventilation system hummed softly in the corner. Every detail of this space was carefully built, not to shelter, but to conceal. With shaking hands, Lauren fumbled for her phone, her eyes flooded with tears. She could barely feel her fingers as she tapped the screen and dialed. "Detective Rivera," came the voice after 2 rings, calm but alert. "I found them," Lauren gasped. "My daughters. They're alive. They've been here, in a hidden room under the barn. Nathan did this." The words tumbled out, broken by sobs. Rivera's tone shifted immediately. Questions followed. Were the girls okay? Injuries? Could they move? He told her officers were already on the way. "Don't confront him if he returns," he said firmly. "Stay where you are. Just stay with your daughters." The call ended. Lauren slid down the ladder with unsteady hands, her foot missing a rung before she caught herself. The underground room was larger than it looked from above, maybe 12 feet across. A small cot sat in the corner, clearly shared by both girls. A plastic bucket behind a hanging sheet served as a crude bathroom. She pulled both girls into her arms, sobbing freely. They felt too light, their bones prominent under the thin fabric of their pajamas, their skin dull from days underground. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered, kissing their heads, their cheeks, their foreheads. "I've looked for you every single day." They clung to her, but their confusion remained. "You knew we were here, right?" Abby asked quietly. "Uncle Nathan said it was your idea. He told us you needed to get better, and that this was the only way to keep you safe." Emma nodded, fingers twisting in her braid. "He brought us food and books. He said you'd get sicker if we made noise. That even when he wasn't here, we had to stay silent. For you." Lauren swallowed back the fury burning in her chest. "What kind of rules did he give you down here?" she asked gently. Emma looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "There were special rules for at night." Abby's head whipped around. "Shh," she said quickly, glancing nervously at the ladder. "We're not supposed to talk about that. He said you'd be really upset if you found out. And then you might get sick again." Lauren cupped their faces in her hands. "Listen to me," she said firmly, but with love. "I was never sick. I didn't know you were here. Uncle Nathan lied to you. He took you away and hid you from me." The girls looked at each other, disbelief flickering in their eyes. "But why?" Emma whispered, lip trembling. Lauren took a breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "That doesn't matter right now," she said gently. "What matters is that you're safe and help is on the way." She held them again, rocking them gently like she used to when they were babies. And then, in the quiet, Emma's small voice rose once more. "Mom," she asked, "are you mad at us for following Uncle Nathan's night rules?" "She said we had to follow the night rules," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "He said it was really important, especially when he visited after dark." Abby immediately elbowed her, eyes wide in warning. "Shh!" Lauren froze. Her arms instinctively tightened around her daughters as their words sank in. The joy of finding them alive began to twist into something colder, something darker. A mother's relief curdled into rage. She forced herself to stay composed, to keep her voice neutral, though her mind raced with terrible implications. What exactly had Nathan been doing during those secret visits? What had he told them? What had he done? She clenched her fists, knuckles whitening. Her daughters were scared. She couldn't scare them more. Not now. But every instinct screamed at her to get them out. "We're leaving," she said firmly, her voice calm but resolute. "Right now. Those rules aren't real. You never have to follow them again. Do you understand?" She looked each of them in the eyes, trying to ground them in something solid, something safe. But the girls hesitated. Their trust in Uncle Nathan clearly deep, built over weeks of manipulation. Their mother's sudden arrival was rewriting a story they'd been told to believe. Lauren didn't waste another second. She took their hands and guided them to the ladder. Abby climbed first, her legs shaky from confinement. Emma followed, glancing back repeatedly, afraid her mother might vanish again. Once they reached the barn, Lauren paused, for the first time seeing them in real light. Their skin was pale, their expressions uncertain, their bodies thinner, too fragile. Her throat tightened, but she held the emotion back. This wasn't the moment to cry. "Let's go to the house," she whispered, pulling them close. "The police are on their way." They were halfway to the door when Emma stopped suddenly. Her body stiffened, her voice a breath of air. "Headlights!" Lauren turned, heart slamming against her ribs. Twin beams swept across the far end of the property, cutting through the darkness like blades. The familiar rumble of Nathan's truck crawled up the dirt drive. "Sometimes he comes back late," Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "He checks on us when he can't sleep." Lauren's brain snapped into motion. She had seconds. She rushed the girls back behind the hay bales. "Stay here," she said firmly. "No matter what. Don't move, don't speak. Not until I say it's safe." She crouched near the entrance, grabbing the nearest object she could find, an old pitchfork hanging on the wall. Her grip tightened. Her heart pounded. The barn creaked. Outside, the truck doors slammed shut. Then the front door groaned open, loud in the still night. Nathan stepped in. "Why's this unlocked?" he muttered, his flashlight beam sweeping the floor in erratic arcs. "I closed this." Lauren remained in the shadows, barely breathing. His light paused, right over the open hatch where the hay had been moved aside. His body tensed immediately, shoulders squared. Something shifted in his entire posture. "Girls?" he called softly, voice laced with false kindness. "You hiding from me?" When no answer came, his tone turned cold, darker. "I told you what happens when we break the rules." The flashlight darted wildly as he moved toward the hatch. Lauren watched as he climbed down into the underground room, the place where he had held her children, right beneath her feet. From above, she could hear his footsteps below, hurried, panicked, accompanied by frantic muttering. Then, scrambling, he was coming back up. Nathan emerged, wild-eyed, and he saw her. Lauren stood near the barn entrance, pitchfork in hand, the moonlight catching its dull edges. Behind her, just visible through the hay bales, the twins crouched, wide-eyed and silent. Nathan's expression shifted in terrifying waves. Surprise, then fury, then something worse, something possessive. "You ruined it," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It was quiet, measured, and full of threat. "I was patient," he went on, voice tight. "I protected them. I kept them safe from everything." His eyes flicked to the girls, then back to Lauren. And the man she thought she knew, the one who held her at Mark's funeral, who ran the farm, who comforted her every night, was gone. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated. This was planned. And she had to protect her daughters from him, no matter what happened next. There was something in Nathan's eyes, a quiet calculation that made Lauren's blood run cold. She raised the pitchfork in a desperate defense, but Nathan moved faster than she expected. In one swift motion, he knocked it from her hands. The metal clattered against the wooden floor as Lauren stumbled back, instinctively throwing herself between Nathan and her daughters. Then he lunged. His weight slammed into her, forcing her to the ground. Her arms were pinned beneath him, his strength fueled by years of hard farm labor. His face hovered inches from hers, unrecognizable, twisted by something manic. "We could have been a family," he hissed, his breath hot and ragged. "I've been raising them right, teaching them to love me. Do you know how patient I've been, waiting for you to understand?" Lauren caught sight of her daughters peeking out from behind the hay bales, frozen, terrified. One whimpered, and that sound alone snapped something deep inside her. With a surge of strength, She freed one arm and raked her nails across Nathan's face. He screamed as red lines opened across his cheek, reeling back just enough. "Run!" Lauren screamed. "Run to Mrs. Keller's, now!" The twins hesitated, torn by fear, conditioned by Nathan's rules. But Lauren scrambled upright, searching the barn for anything she could use. Her hand found the wooden handle of a shovel leaning against a support beam. "Go!" she cried again, this time with fire. Abby and Emma bolted toward the barn doors, bare feet pounding on the floorboards. Nathan surged to his feet, blood streaking down his cheek. He turned toward the girls, but Lauren stepped into his path, the shovel raised. With a guttural cry of fury, she swung. The metal struck his shoulder with a sickening crack, the force rippling through her arms. Nathan staggered back, gasping, pain twisting his features, but not stopping him. His eyes locked on her now, cold and unrecognizable. "They're mine now," he snarled. Gone was the man who once consoled her after Mark's funeral. Gone was the steady presence she thought she could rely on. "You grieved them," he spat. "You had no idea they were right here. You don't deserve them." Then came the sentence that stole the breath from her lungs. Mark didn't deserve any of it either, always taking everything for granted. The farm, you, the girls. Lauren's vision blurred. Was he behind the accident that took Mark's life? It all clicked into place. The timing, the control, the growing possessiveness. Lauren stood firm between him and the door, the shovel gripped tightly in her shaking hands. From outside, she could barely hear the distant sound of footsteps, the girls running, the hope of safety. "They were never yours," she said through clenched teeth. "They're mine, Mark's and mine." That did it. Nathan's last thread of composure snapped. With a roar, he charged. But just before he could reach her, the barn door exploded open. Bang! Light flooded the space. Police officers stormed in, voices sharp and overlapping. "Police! Hands where we can see them. Down on the ground! Now!" Detective Rivera was the first through, weapon raised, flashlight beam slicing through the dust. Nathan froze mid-charge, startled. His body went rigid. Then, slowly, with eerie control, he raised his hands. In an instant, his expression changed, from rage to confusion. His face softened into something innocent. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said calmly, as if he hadn't just attacked her. "I was protecting them. My nieces. They were scared." "Face down," Rivera barked. "Hands behind your back." Two officers advanced, weapons still trained on him. Nathan complied, lowering himself to the ground. Lauren could hardly breathe as she watched the cuffs go on. She dropped the shovel with a metallic thud and bolted outside. There, near a police SUV, another officer knelt beside her daughters. He was wrapping them in emergency blankets, the silver reflecting the flashing red and blue of the cruisers. In the swirling chaos, the girls looked so small. Emma reached out, her hand barely visible from beneath the blanket. Lauren rushed forward and gripped it tightly. She wasn't letting go again. Emma's fingers were ice cold as she clutched her mother's hand, despite the mild night air. "Is Uncle Nathan in trouble?" she asked quietly, her voice small and uncertain. Lauren knelt beside her daughters and pulled them close, searching for words that would comfort without deepening their fear. "Yes, sweetheart," she said gently. "What he did was very wrong, but you're safe now. That's what matters." In the distance, the sound of more sirens pierced the night, a growing chorus as additional police units arrived. Then, Lauren saw the faint beam of headlights bouncing down the dirt road. Mrs. Keller's old station wagon came into view, making its way toward the farm, likely drawn by the flashing lights. A surge of gratitude washed over Lauren. Her neighbor had been a quiet presence throughout the nightmare, and now her support meant everything. Lauren knew she would need all the help she could get to help her daughters heal from what they'd endured. Across the yard, Nathan was being led toward a waiting police car. For just a brief moment, his eyes met Lauren's, and the mask dropped. Gone was the false concern, the calculated calm. What she saw now was raw, a flash of hatred so sharp it made her blood run cold. Then the car door shut behind him, and whatever words he might have said were sealed away. Paramedics gently guided Lauren and the twins toward the ambulance. She wrapped her arms around their trembling shoulders as they climbed inside. Their small bodies clung to her as the vehicle pulled away from the farmhouse, red and blue lights flashing against the barn's weathered boards. Inside the ambulance, the girls huddled beside Lauren on the narrow gurney. The sterile smell, the steady beep of monitors, the hum of the engine. It was all so unfamiliar, so overwhelming. Emma looked up, her voice barely louder than a breath. Is Uncle Nathan going to be mad at us? The question broke Lauren's heart. She brushed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead, trying to keep her own voice steady. No, sweetheart, she whispered. You're safe now. That's all that matters. As the ambulance raced through the night, Lauren held her daughters tightly, feeling their ribs beneath her arms. For the first time in 2 unbearable months, she dared to believe there might be a future worth holding on to. At the hospital, while Abby and Emma were being examined, Lauren stood with Detective Rivera just outside the exam room. His notebook was open, but her eyes kept drifting to the window, watching her daughters as if afraid they might vanish again. This wasn't impulsive, Rivera said, his tone quiet, measured. Nathan had been planning this for months. Lauren's gaze snapped back to him. He began constructing that hidden room not long after your husband's death, Rivera continued. The building materials, the ventilation system, it all lines up with the receipts you found. Lauren's breath caught. The timing made sickening sense. He likely did the noisy work when you were away on deliveries, Rivera added. And the larger supply drop-offs? He disguised those as normal farm business. No one suspected a thing. Then came the part that made Lauren's stomach turn. The substance we found in the barn. Vermguard, Rivera said, rubbing his brow. It's marketed as pest control, but in certain corners of the internet, it's known to mask human scent. It throws off search dogs. That's why the K9 units missed it. He was spreading it regularly. Lauren leaned against the wall, her body suddenly heavy. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion hit like a tidal wave. Rivera gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You did what a dozen trained investigators couldn't, Mrs. Winters. You found them. You brought them home. There was admiration in his voice, but also a hint of sorrow. And I promise you, he added firmly, Nathan will never have the chance to hurt another child again. Before she could respond, the exam room door opened. A doctor stepped into the hallway, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Winters? She asked softly. Lauren turned to face her. Dr. Patel, a woman with kind eyes and a quiet, calming presence that had immediately put the girls at ease. We've completed the initial evaluations of Abby and Emma, she said, guiding Lauren a few steps away from Rivera for privacy. Lauren braced herself, dread creeping in. Are they okay? Dr. Patel's expression was measured, compassionate but serious. Physically, they're stable, dehydrated and malnourished, but no critical injuries. They've each lost about 15% of their body weight since their last documented checkup. Lauren swallowed hard, her throat tight. But, the doctor continued, choosing her words carefully, the emotional trauma of their captivity will require specialized support, Dr. Patel said gently. I'm recommending an immediate consultation with Dr. Levine, our pediatric trauma specialist. Lauren nodded, the words barely registering. Her mind was still struggling to process the magnitude of what Nathan had done. But one thing was clear. She would get her daughters whatever help they needed. When can I take them home? She asked quietly. We'd like to keep them overnight. Dr. Patel replied. "For observation and hydration. If everything goes well, they should be able to go home the day after tomorrow. I'll arrange for Dr. Levine to meet with all of you tomorrow morning to begin psychological assessments." Lauren thanked her, then quietly stepped back into the twins' room. Abby and Emma were sitting upright in adjacent hospital beds, looking impossibly small beneath the blankets. A nurse had found them fresh pajamas, soft cotton, decorated with cheerful cartoon animals. The filthy clothes they'd worn for 2 months were gone. That night, Lauren stayed in the chair between their beds. She dozed in short, restless bursts, jolting awake at every shift, every sigh. Despite the doctor's reassurances, she couldn't bring herself to fully sleep, terrified they might vanish again the moment her eyes closed. The night passed slowly, filled with the soft hum of hospital equipment and the occasional whisper of footsteps in the hallway. Just after dawn, Mrs. Keller arrived. Her eyes were red from tears, but this time they were joyful. She wrapped Lauren in a hug, holding her tightly with more strength than Lauren expected. "If you hadn't called me that night," she whispered, gripping Lauren's hands, "if you hadn't listened to your instincts." Lauren squeezed back, overcome with gratitude. Without Mrs. Keller's steady encouragement, without her gentle push to trust herself, Lauren might still be in the dark, still believing Nathan's lies, still searching. Throughout the morning, visitors arrived. Mark's parents stood quietly at the door, guilt etched deeply into their faces. No one had suspected what Nathan had become. For years, they'd viewed him as the less capable brother, always putting their hopes on Mark. Now, they were left to wonder, had that lifelong imbalance festered into something far darker? By midday, Detective Rivera returned with updates. Nathan had been denied bail. The charges were serious, and he was considered a flight risk. A search of his room revealed journals, disturbing entries going back years, pages filled with fantasies, delusions, and a long brewing obsession with Lauren that predated even Mark's death. Rivera didn't say it outright, but the implication was chilling. Maybe Mark's fatal accident hadn't been an accident at all. The day moved in a blur of interviews, questions, and quiet check-ins. Dr. Levine, the trauma specialist, arrived mid-morning. Her calm and gentle approach helped the girls begin to open up, just enough to make a plan. She assured Lauren that with time, therapy, and support, healing was possible. Children were resilient. But this would take work. Lauren barely left the girl's side. Even stepping into the hallway made her stomach twist. The fear that something, someone, might take them again hovered just beneath the surface. Mrs. Keller stayed the entire day. She ushered away well-meaning visitors when the twins became overwhelmed, brought Lauren meals she barely touched, and gently intercepted hospital staff when necessary. As the sun began to set, the room quieted. The twins, worn out from examinations and emotions, finally drifted into sleep, their hands still clasped together beneath the blankets, as if even in dreams they feared being apart again. "You should rest too," Mrs. Keller said softly, returning from the cafeteria with 2 paper cups of tea. Lauren shook her head. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet." The last light of the day bathed the room in soft gold. Lauren reached over and gently brushed a lock of hair from Abby's forehead. For the first time in 2 months, she felt something she thought she'd lost: hope. The road ahead would be long. There would be therapy, court hearings, sleepless nights. The questions wouldn't end overnight. But her daughters were here, alive, breathing, healing. Tomorrow, they would go home, and together, they would begin the long journey of rebuilding their lives as a family.